say I'm debating Pocahontas, right? I promise you I'll do this. I will take, you know those little kits they sell on television for $2? Learn your heritage. We will take that little kit and say, but we have to do it gently. Because we're in the Me Too generation, so we have to be very gentle. And we will very gently take that kid, and we will slowly toss it, hoping it doesn't hit her, and we will say, I will give you $1 million to your favorite charity, paid for by Trump, if you take the test and it shows you're an Indian, you know.
President Trump unleashed in Great Falls, Montana on Thursday night. A lot to talk about now with our roundtable, joined by Patrick Gaspard, president of the Open Societies Foundation, former political director in the Obama White House, Republican strategist Sarah Fagan, the Bush White House political affairs director, now a CNBC contributor, Democratic strategist Stephanie Cutter. She is a veteran also of the Obama White House. Happy to welcome her as our newest ABC News contributor. Joining here at ABC, Christie, the former New Jersey governor and ABC News contributor. And Chris, let me begin with you. Let's talk about the Supreme Court. President clearly working the phones. He loves this process of picking a Supreme Court justice. Loves to have a little bit of surprise as well. But are you pretty confident that the choice is one of these 4 people on the short list we've been talking about?
I am, and I think they're 4 really good people, 4 very different people in terms of their background and their experience. But I think all of them are people who no one could argue are extraordinarily well qualified from a legal perspective to serve on the Supreme Court. So I think the president's got a good list of 4 people. Knowing him, he is going to continue to think about this until the last hour, and that he can make a decision. Which means
the lobbying is going to continue to the last hour.
Well, of course, but I got to tell you the truth. I don't know how affected he is by that, George. I think on this kind of stuff, he'll have a pretty good gut feel of whether that person is someone that he wants to sell to the American people and to the United States Senate as the right person for the Supreme Court.
Sarah Fagan, not just gut feel. We just had Leonard Leo here, formerly of the Federalist Society. In many ways, anybody on the short list is pretty much a known quantity to Republicans.
They are. They have track records, of course, but some of them have longer track records. You know, there's been some conversation about Brett Kavanaugh, for example, former colleague of mine. He's been on the court for 12 years. He has an incredible, impeccable track record, and I think somebody who would move the court forward and influence his fellow justices if selected.
12 years on the court, Patrick Gaspard, may not be enough in President Trump's mind to overcome the connection to George W. Bush.
Well, yeah, and you showed that clip from that rally, and in addition to those attack lines, he actually even had the gall to go after President Bush's impressive record on encouraging Americans to volunteer to the 1,000
The first President Bush,
The first President Bush, and it's just absolutely, I think, regrettable and I'd say reprehensible. But yes, the judge does have, I think, 289 decisions that are going to be parsed through. All 4 of these potential contenders have a long history that would suggest that all of them are going to move the courts in this decisive moment further to the right. And I think that's going to compel 2 moderate to independent Republican senators and 3 Democratic senators in red states that Trump won to ask a really tough question about how this moment is very different than the Gorsuch moment in that.
Which wasn't changing the balance of the court.
Wasn't changing the balance, and this might be a good deal more polarizing.
Stephanie, you're a veteran of these confirmation battles from both the Senate and the White House. Put on that strategist hat. Is there really anything standing in the way of any of these 4 nominees, given the lineup in the Senate right now?
Well, potentially. You know, of course, Gorsuch won with 55 votes, including 3 Democrats. But since he was confirmed, Republicans are down 1, with Doug Jones winning the Senate seat in Alabama. We don't know whether John McCain will be able to come back to vote for this nominee. So that puts the count right at the balance at 51. If Democrats hold together, and there is a compelling argument for Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski to see this as the swing seat, which could mean a big change in direction for women's rights, the ability for women to make their own decisions about their health care decisions. Both of these senators have said that's incredibly important to them. There's a chance that this nominee could at least be delayed, if not blocked. We don't know yet, though.
The flip side, though, of that argument, of course, is that we're heading into a very contentious election. We have 10 Democrats running for the Senate in states that Donald Trump won. And so the notion that some of those Democrats would not support this nominee for their own political futures to me, leads me to think that any one of these four would get through the process and be confirmed in time.
Except you're missing one important point.
But in the context of the election and the midterms, I would just also add that right now, poll that we saw from the Washington Post last Friday demonstrates that this president only has the approval of 32% of American women. So if this Supreme Court fight is litigated on health care, litigated around choice, that's going to have implications for Republicans as well who are running.
This Supreme Court fight's not going to be litigated out there. It's going to be litigated in the United States Senate. Republicans who do not vote for one of these four very qualified nominees are going to have an awfully difficult time explaining to their constituencies why they didn't. And again, this is one of those things where what party you're in really does matter. And you talk about those three, there's more than three, as Sarah points out, that are going to really have to worry about this. Claire McCaskill is going to have to really think about what she's going to do in more so. Bill Nelson, right. I mean, I think there are 6 or 7 Democrats.
What happens once one Democrat goes, you could see a whole bunch go.
That's absolutely true.
Right.
But the one thing that we are talking about with this Supreme Court nomination that we very rarely talk about in these nominations, usually it turns over Roe v. Wade or some obscure Commerce Clause argument. This one, I think, for these Democrats that are up for re-election in some red states, it's going to turn on health care because there are cases moving through the court. The last check on this president has been the courts in terms of unraveling the Affordable Care Act. And there are cases moving towards the Supreme Court that...
So this weekend we saw them in the district court.
Exactly. And we saw the administration just yesterday end payments to insurance companies that helps them cover with people with pre-existing conditions. Those Democrats in those red states care about people with pre-existing conditions. That is going to be determinative.
That's not going to be determinative to Joe Donnelly in Indiana or Heidi Heitkamp in her state. I mean, the fact is that those states are so red and Trump won by so much that they're in very, very difficult, if not almost impossible races, and they're not going to want to make their lives more difficult.
Well, we saw also Senator Blumenthal. I mean, the line of attack, which we anticipate from Democrats are gearing up for a war over whoever the nominee is. You know, that if, you know, there's going to be no rights for anyone who's gay, no women will have any rights. You must recuse yourself on a vote in a theoretical vote on impeachment. I mean, Democrats are going to throw everything at this, and at the end of the day, the governor's right. This is politically untenable.
Well, but right now
for people like Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp and Joe Donnelly.
No, you know, I'll take your point, but right now we're not seeing Democrats gearing up for war. We're seeing Republicans gearing up for war around this nomination, where you're seeing a profound fissure inside of the Republican Party.
There's no fissure.
I
don't think there's any fissure.
Just how right they can take
Let me try to connect some of these points here as well. Let's say Mueller does come forward with some kind of report before the final hearings, which are likely to be in October. Isn't that, and we heard the response there from Leonard Leo, but isn't that going to strengthen the Democrats' case for delaying anything if a Mueller report drops right in the middle of confirmation hearings?
It'll just, what it'll do, I think, quite frankly, is make confirmation easier, because then people would be distracted. If the Supreme Court is the only thing that people are going to be able to focus on, that'll be one thing. If we're focusing on a report from Bob Mueller and the Supreme Court, this nominee will, I think, sail through, because people will be distracted by the brightest, shiniest object. And let me say this, there's not going to be a report. I'm willing to bet you right now, there will be no report until after the election. There's no way he's going to finish between... Listen, George, he's going to have to finish them. We're sitting here today at July 7th or 8th, right? July 8th. He's going to have to finish, you know, by September 1st. Not going to happen.
If there's ever an argument to delay a Supreme Court nominee, it is with a special prosecutor issuing a report on whether the President of the United States colluded with Russia on an election and obstructed justice. That is an argument to delay a Supreme Court nominee.
Really? Because you're speculating that at some point a matter like that may in fact get to the Supreme Court, and that person you're already deciding could be the deciding vote, when in fact, when you look at what happened when President Clinton was in office, the people who President Clinton appointed voted against him on the Paula Jones matter. Supreme Court justices on issues like that are not going to vote in a partisan way. They're not going to vote according to party. We've seen that over and over again, whether it was the Nixon tapes case or there's Bill Clinton and Paula Jones.
Although we have seen the court get more and more partisan over time.
They rose above it.
But Governor, the notion that somehow senators are going to be distracted from the Supreme Court decision, I think, is that's a stretch. This is one of the
Because of what the report
well,
says,
no. This is one of the most remarkable shifts that we're going to have in the Supreme Court in generations. The 1930 shift was remarkable. The 1968 shift was profound. This one is as consequential, and there's no way that Democratic senators or Republican senators will be distracted from it. And this is going to be litigated.
Particularly when it is the
fulsome
last
way.
branch of government
Yes.
that performs a check and balance on this president.
Let's not forget that this nominee is going to get confirmed because of Harry Reid getting rid of, including the nuclear option for court picks. And so Democrats have no one but themselves to thank.
Well, it was
for the
actually
fact
Mitch
that-
McConnell who did away with the filibuster for Supreme Court pick.
Both sides are always switch places on all of these nominations. Isn't it true that even if Harry Reid had not done away with the filibuster, if it were necessary to do away with the filibuster now to get a Supreme Court pick through, Republicans would do it, just as the Democrats would.
I don't know if
the
Chuck Grassley would
filibuster
have
were
gone along with
Republicans.
that, but the reality is this is the way we select Supreme Court justices now in this country, and whoever this person is, they will be able to get confirmed.
And I'm not ready to buy into this, that this is the most profound moment in the court since 1968. Anthony Kennedy, if you look at his voting record, in the main, if you don't look at Roe and at
gay
rights, Anthony Kennedy
to his story.
Okay,
Two of the most important decisions the Supreme Court has ever made, Governor.
But guess what? On most other things, I understand your point, except that those issues are much more important to some as opposed to others. There are other issues on the court that are much more important to certain people around the country. And Anthony Kennedy has been a mainline.
You're right that Roe versus Wade is important to the majority of the country.
It has been a mainline conservative. And so this profound change that we're talking about, I think, as someone who's appointed Supreme Court justices at the state level, no matter what you're told before you nominate them, take my word for it, they forget once they get to the court and they make decisions based upon what they believe is right.
Right, but you have a president. Let's not forget that this is the first president who laid out some pretty strict litmus tests during the campaign, which is what ultimately helped him get elected, on the kind of justice that he's looking for, both on Roe v. Wade, also on health care and many other things.
Are you trying to tell me that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama did not have a litmus test on Roe v. Wade? You trying to tell me that Bill Clinton or Barack Obama would have appointed a justice that they knew was going to not support Roe versus Wade?
Well,
Please stop. Just because Donald Trump was honest and said it. Wait a second. Just because Donald Trump was honest and said it, and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama didn't, don't tell me that they would have considered
all you
pro-life
have to do is
justice.
Look at the court today to know that the governor's right about that. And look, all this conversation about Roe v. Wade, that's not likely to ever come up. That is not likely to be the legal precedent. I mean, the court has moved to Casey versus Planned Parenthood as the legal precedent that will
maybe
be
not a
debated.
strict overturning, but you could see the court continuing to improve, shaving away at Roe v. Wade over time.
Also the science on abortion is the whole other factor that we forget 36 years later.
No question.
Has moved this debate. This debate is completely different than it was when Roe v. Wade passed, and any future court cases are going to be different because of all of those factors.
I think that's absolutely right. Let's turn quickly back to the investigations. And Chris, let me go back to the Michael Cohen potential cooperation with prosecutors. You heard Rudy Giuliani saying he's not worried about it at all. Do you share that?
Listen,
optimism?
I don't think Rudy's telling the whole truth there. I mean, I don't think you can never not be worried when someone who has at one time represented your client is now in the crosshairs of prosecutors. But what I will tell you is I do think that Michael Cohen's role, based upon my observations, has been significantly overplayed. He was one of many, many lawyers that Donald Trump had. And the fact that
he got the hottest of hot-button issues, didn't he? Trump Tower in Moscow, the Stormy Daniels case.
Listen, you know what? My experience with Donald Trump is there aren't very many cool legal issues that he gets involved in, not ones that don't create a lot of controversy and a lot of heat. So, listen, but it's all speculative, George. In the end, if Michael Cohen has some things to say, I think he's made it very clear he's going to say them with the actions he's taken by hiring a new lawyer, by cleaning up his Twitter handle, all the rest of it. And by the way, that in my experience as a prosecutor, every criminal defendant makes almost all the time, which is to put their own liberty and the sake of their family ahead of anybody else. That's what happens.
I thought that Michael Cohen's interview with you was absolutely astounding, and it's clear that somebody who has had a long time loyalty to this president has shifted. That has to be causing anxiety inside of the White House and with the president's counsel.
That has got to be the last word today. Thank you all very much. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.